All right, welcome to Business Learning Lab, where Meredith and I share all of the business mistakes so you don't have to make them. Today we are going to be talking about buying a business as a growth strategy. This is something that's fresh on our mind, having recently purchased another virtual assistant agency. We learned a lot along the way. And so we thought this was perfect material for Business Learning Lab. Um, so we thought we would start by just talking a little bit about what the process looks like if you're interested in buying a business as a way to expand upon your current business. Because I think on the surface, it seems really intimidating to buy another business. And I don't think enough business owners think of it as an option. So I want to talk about a little bit about the process, Meredith, so we can kind of demystify that and make it a little less intimidating in the process. And then, of course, talk about things we would have done differently. And when it comes time to buy another business, sort of our non-negotiables moving forward in the process, because we definitely made some mistakes that we won't make again. So
For sure. For sure.
so yeah.
But I guess let's start by talking about, kind of like the idea of buying a business and how initially we kind of like floated it out there, like, oh, maybe, yeah, that would be a thing. And we'd always kind of pictured as acquiring smaller companies and absorbing them into Sparent, which is a strategy. It's still a strategy we may undertake at some point. But in this case, this fell into our lap with this opportunity to buy an entirely separate company in the virtual assistant field, but totally different in every way. So we did not merge it with Sparent. So I don't know about you, Jen, but the reaction I got from a lot of people in my life when I said we were buying this company was like, what? Like, you're just buying a company? How do you do that? So, I don't know if you had people who are just as surprised.
Yeah, I think they were like, what? Like because I think as business owners, when we think about growing our business, we think about more sales, more products, more services, like, more customers, more clients. This is how we are growing and scaling our company, becoming more efficient, hiring more people. But the real advantage, I think, of buying another company that is in your field is that you come to the table with this intrinsic knowledge of the industry. So taking on that other business can actually save you money if if you're looking at if your numbers, if the costs, what it costs you to acquire a new customer in terms of marketing and all of that, and hiring and all of the costs associated with building your business, not to mention the time cost. How much time is going to take to get the amount of customers that you might be able to buy in one transaction. So to me that was really attractive, like, oh, here's a business. It's also in our industry, but a niche business, which we are a lot less niched with Sparent, our first company. And so that was really attractive to me as a business owner. I kind of could see the value of that, and they were in a very much a growing industry, being in the mental health field. So all of these things were very attractive to us. The intimidation factor is like, oh, where do you come up with the money? Where do you just write a check? No, you don't just write a check. The business is going to have a sales price. First of all, everything's negotiable, including the sales price. But even how you get to the paying off of that business. Buying a business can look so many different ways. In our case, we thought our plan was going to be going through the Small Business Administration. Meredith researched and found a loan program that seemed like the absolute thing we needed in terms of the amount of money and who it was for. Unfortunately, we spent a lot of time in the application process. The seller was very patient and assumed that we would be going through this process, so they had factored that time in. But when you go through the SBA, you have to jump through a lot of hoops. they were hoops we were willing to jump through, including, writing a complete business plan, very time consuming, getting all of our financials, together. That wasn't too hard because, we both use, the same accountant for our business and personal, we both do. So it was, all the documentation was in one place. So, getting that together was fairly easy. But we also
But
but we did not get the loan. And it
yeah,
took a long time to get the word no. And when you hear
yeah,
no, at least with the SBA, they don't give you a lot of explanation and there's no reapplying. It's just you're dead in the water. And we had just wasted what, 8 weeks maybe in the application
yeah,
process.
and so many
Um,
hours. I mean, writing
it
that
was
business plan alone. Oh my
so
gosh.
many hours, so much time. And just to, just so like, I thought we looked great on paper. We both have, resources, savings, real estate,
No debt. We had no
no
business debt.
debt,
We had
save.
no excessive personal debt. I mean, we both own houses and stuff, but like no credit card debt, no medical
Yeah,
debt,
no credit card debt, no.
no
I was like,
liens
I
on
don't know who loan us money. Like this is, and we were asking for, like, this wasn't like $1 million business we were buying.
it.
So
Yeah, we're asking for a relatively low amount of money given
yeah,
what you can apply for.
yeah. So whatever, we did not get the loan. I'm only sharing that because I've heard since from other business owners who've been through the same process that yes, it is very, very hard to get approved. If we had known that, we probably would approach this purchase of the business differently from day one, because as it turns out, the seller, who was very, wanted to like unload this business, get it out of her life,
Very
was
motivated sellers, we'll
very
say.
motivated seller, very motivated seller. She was willing to finance it at a lower rate than we would have gotten through the SBA. So I was like, oh geez, if we had known that, we could have just started there and kind of closed the deal much quicker.
Exactly. And yeah, just to put it in perspective. So if we'd gotten the SBA loan, I can't remember exactly, but I think we were asking for 75,000 or something. And it would have been a 10-year loan at 6% or 5%, something like that, with a early prepayment penalty. So if we were making more money, we would have been penalized to pay it back faster. So we would have been saddled with this debt, which Jen and I, we don't like that. So we would have had it for 10 years or we would have to pay a penalty. With the seller financing, she offered us that we could finance it for 5 years at a lower interest rate. I forget, 4
No,
cents.
yeah, no prepayment.
No prepayment penalty. And then we have a balloon payment at the end in 5 years, but we have 5 years to get ready for it. We're not worried about it. We're planning for it, so it shouldn't come as a surprise to us.
Yeah.
And so much more flexible. It's not showing up on our credit for whatever, I don't know. But yeah, and initially she wanted a much bigger down payment than we could do without the loan. We just didn't have that much cash reserves, so she was flexible on that. She was willing to take the earnest money we had put down as a down payment. It's just, and that's not everyone's going to have that situation. Not every seller is going to be as motivated and in as much of a hurry as she was to divest of this company. But the idea being, think outside the box. You never know. Doesn't hurt to ask.
Always ask. Yeah, always ask, because we were nervous asking about a few things in the process, and we were like, because we didn't want to jeopardize. We were very interested in buying the company, and we didn't want to jeopardize. And there was other interest, and so we knew we weren't the only potential buyers, and we didn't want to jeopardize, our running in the choice of being the buyer. So, but we did end up, asking for things, and I don't think we ever heard no. It was always yes, and not that we were asking for anything unreasonable, but
occasionally, they'd have a counter offer, which was fine. Actually, I preferred that after a while because I didn't want it to feel like we were just running roughshod over them, and they were just like saying yes to everything. So if we asked for something and they came back and we negotiated to a middle point, that felt good about that.
Yeah.
I will say one thing that just occurred to me that Jen and all are like rehashing of what we learned in this process. We've not really talked about, but I think one thing that served us really well is in our first sort of informational meeting that we had with the seller and the broker is we came in sort of saying what our values were, that we are very authentic, we're very transparent, we have questions. They're purely informational questions. We are not like being aggressive. We're not questioning your ability to run a business. We're just like, we just have these questions. We're just asking them, and we hope that you'll be honest with us. And I think they really appreciated that and responded well to that. And I've created this foundation of this really good relationship with the seller that I think served us well through the rest of the negotiations, and was partly why she was willing to be. And we were completely transparent when we didn't get the loan. We just told them, like, we don't know why we didn't get it. We didn't get it. We're going to do, like, we were very honest. And I think that I really do think that helped us a lot.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because we were, the seller was going through using a business broker, which is really common. So he was there to kind of handle the paperwork and shepherd all of us through the process. But when we didn't get the loan, he was like, "Oh yeah, that happens all the time." I was like, you could have warned us, because we went in so cocky. We were just so sure we were going to get it. So it was like, I was like devastated. Like, I felt so judged, but I got over it pretty quickly. So yeah, we even negotiated in terms of we negotiated our first 6 months of payments. We asked them to be lower because we were, we were buying a business that was a bit in distress, and we needed a little bit of runway to turn the operations around and get the company more profitable, because it really wasn't profitable when we acquired it. But we knew we could turn it around, but we needed a little runway. So we're very agreeable about that. So our loan payments are half for like the first 6 months, and that's been really great. And like Meredith said, we do have a pretty substantial balloon payment after 5 years, but we have money that is set aside. It's going into a CD specifically for that day. So we've planned for it. It won't be a surprise. We won't be scrambling for that money. And that's, something that's, it's pretty easy to do once you just, work the math backwards, figure out how much money to set aside every month in order to make that balloon payment. We put in a CD, so the money is working for us a little bit, and also is a little harder for us to tap into. It's separate and distinct from our operational and payroll budget. So yeah.
So let's just really quickly, I think we could talk about this forever. There's so much nuance to this, but I think in the spirit of Learning Lab, let's really quickly just sort of go down our top things that we would do differently, that we would have done differently in that transition, or that, the first moments of taking over. So you go first. What's your first thing that you would do differently in retrospect?
Oh, well, I think we have the same things. And this is a big one. I was like a little bit of a pit bull in trying to get the standard operating procedures in our hot little hands. One issue we had is that there was a chief, COO, Chief Operating Officer, in place that wasn't going to be hanging around after the acquisition. And this COO had, because, they were running the company, had a lot of internal information that nobody else had. And I thought that information, the most valuable part of that information that person held, were the standard operating procedures. And I thought, well, if this person's gone day one, we need to come in and be able to run the company. I need the standard operating procedures. Standard operating procedures. In retrospect, they were the ones that we got, and even if we had all of them, they were pretty obsolete almost immediately, because we were going in and just, revamping the operations and changing so much to make the company more, run more efficiently. So they ended up not being the most important things.
Yes.
But there was something that was important, Meredith. And what is that?
That was passwords and platforms, knowing what are all the platforms, what are all the logins, what are the user names, passwords, and what is the authentication factor?
That was the tricky thing, because one of the reasons we weren't worried about it is because they had a LastPass account, password manager for all of the, supposedly for all the passwords. Unfortunately, 99% of them authenticated to the COO's personal cell phone. And as you can imagine,
Yeah.
having, parted ways when we came on board, um, they were not super, super happy about like making
Oh my
this transition easy on us. I get it, but
goodness, a mess.
I felt we were okay because we had the LastPass login
Yeah.
and even had the master code to LastPass, which is kind of
Yeah.
like it's the secret key you need to, access everything.
No.
But it was the two-factor authentication, the way they had it set up had us, it didn't matter. It did
No.
not matter. We were locked out of like, financial platforms, social media platforms, benefits platforms, payroll platforms, every single
Everything.
everything.
And specifically with benefits, so if you're buying a company that has staff and you want to keep that staff and you want to keep them happy and not have them leave, benefits are really important. Don't mess up payroll and don't mess up benefits. Those are the two things that are going to keep you going. And benefits are really hard to get access to because you have HIPAA issues, you have, personal information, financial information, all this kind of stuff. And so it literally, I think all I did for about the first month was try to gain access to these different companies and these different platforms and all this kind of stuff. And that wasn't even an authentication factor issue so much as it was a name on the account. And
Mm.
that name had to be the name that called to change the account. And so, in retrospect, specific to benefits, if we're buying another company, I would insist, I would want proof that the owner, whoever our point of contact is, whoever's selling it to us, is the person, the agent on record for all of those benefits programs. That would have made the whole process so much easier
Yeah.
for us to be able to make that transition. The other thing I'll throw on this list of things we could have done differently is we had to let the COO go. There's no way around it. The company could not afford him. There's a whole lot of reasons. When we told him that, we offered him the opportunity to come back to us with a quote for consulting because we figured we would need his help. We didn't know we'd need it just for authentication codes, but we figured we'd have some questions, and we gave him the option. We wanted him to feel agency over the process. We didn't want it to just be like we're coming in. So we wanted him to have a sense of humanity, agency. So we said, you tell us, give us an hourly rate, what you'll need for consulting. And that kind of went off the rails. It was like a very complicated, came back with a very elaborate, complicated, it took them days and days to get back to us. And meanwhile, we're floundering and we can't get into any of these accounts. So in retrospect, I would have controlled that process more. I would have just given him an hour, said, we're going to give you X dollars an hour. You're going to give us all the information we need until we're done. I think that would have helped also in that transition, but still I would have gone in. The other thing with platforms, what are all the platforms that you're using? Because we were tracking down, we're getting bills from these companies. We didn't even know we were using it. We had what is this? I don't know why I'm paying this. What do we do with this company? Why are we using this platform? So I would have wanted a much more comprehensive list. And actually, one of the things we learned is I would create my own list of categories and give it to the seller and say, fill this in. Who do you use for payment processing? Who do you use for payroll? Who do you use for blah, blah, blah. And fill that in with all the login information, passwords, and authentication process.
Yeah, and this is not to, to beat up on the business that we bought. It was actually a wake-up call for us too, in Spirit, Meredith and I have our, division of duties that works really well for us, but then we're like, oh, wait a minute, Meredith has access to things I don't really have access to because she handles them and vice versa. And we always come from the philosophy that our business is an asset. And even though we're not planning on selling our business, we want to be able to sell the business, because if it's in a saleable, shape, then that means it's, we've got SOPs documented, we have all of our internal operations running smoothly. So now we've started that process of what we wish they had done, and we are documenting all of our platforms. We're fixing the two-factor authentication and moving from a two-factor authenticating to cell phones to like a Google authenticator. It's a process. It takes a while, because if you've had business any length of time, you'll be surprised like how many platforms, tools, software that you need, access information to. So we're getting that all documented. So Anybody that buys our business, in the future will thank us. So
Yes. And if something happens to one of us that we're inaccessible for a minute or forever, we'll thank each other
yeah.
for having
Absolutely. We should have done it sooner, but definitely that experience really put a sense of urgency to it, for us too. So yeah, we don't like to go over 20 minutes. There was so much to cover here, and I think we'll continue expanding on this topic, because I do think it is something that businesses should consider as a growth strategy, but also, for those of us that consider our business as an asset, if you are thinking about selling your business either today or tomorrow, there are things on the flip side that you need to consider as a business owner, how to make your business more of an asset. So we're going to be talking a lot about that, just coming off of our recent experience.
Exactly. All right. Well, I guess that is it for this week's Learning Lab. So we'll wrap it up, and we'll be talking more about all of these things and so much more in the future.
Yes. So please ask us questions, make comments. We always forget to ask, the call to action piece. We always forget. You can visit us at, sparent.co, and now moveforwardvirtualassistants.com, or wearing two business hats these days. So, but please comment or ask any questions, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.